WEFM, the new fresh sound.
Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
Alrighty, good folks. We are back with another talk segment, our commentary segment. So, Ari, take it away.
So last week we discussed a past student from the Barley Secondary School who went onto the premises and threatened to stab the principal. He was in court on Monday and remanded by the recent senior magistrate Colin John for 2 nights in prison, which he has now described as the worst experience of his life. If you're curious, the story is on Eyewitness News. It reads, school dropout who threatened to stab deputy principal says 2 nights in prison, the worst experience of my life. It reads, a Form 2 dropout who went to his former school and threatened to stab the deputy principal with a pair of scissors says the 2 nights he spent in prison were the worst experience of his life. It was the worst experience of my life, he said, and I would not like to go back. Up there is no good. We're talking about Venal Kolzak, an 18-year-old of Barley, and that is what he said to the senior magistrate when he reappeared in court last Wednesday. So on Monday, he pleaded guilty to the charge that on February 2nd at Barley, he entered upon the school compound at the Barley Secondary School as a trespasser and at the time had in his possession a pair of scissors with intent to intimidate. So the story is he went on to the school compound. The deputy principal met him. He was wearing a black t-shirt, not the school uniform. So naturally, the principal asked him what he was doing on the compound. He had an attitude. The principal asked him to leave. He refused to leave. The principal then took out his cell phone and took a picture of him. That aggravated him, and he pulled a scissors and attacked the principal. But the principal escaped to his office and was able to call the police. When he got caught, he told the court. He went on to the compound. He said he thought it was road relays. All excuses are not good enough. But as punishment, the senior magistrate sent him to prison, remanded him for 2 nights in the prison, and clearly he has learned his lesson. Now, in addition to the remand, the senior magistrate also put him on a $500 bond, which is if he breaks the bond within 1 year, he'll have to pay $500 to the court. Now, clearly, well, at least in front of the court, he seemed to have learned his lesson. Now, this specific case, it shows me that it is possible for you for the police or authorities to impose fear into some people who are doing wrong things without physical abuse. And while I'm reading the story, I immediately think of the young man who stole the bike in the Stubbs area and the police allegedly beat him until he was scarred and bleeding. No, I do think that something like this should have been implemented where they remand him just to scare him a bit, put him in a cell or something, alert his parents what they're doing and why they're doing it. But that was not the case. No, what is happening here is new. Usually parents think that the children are a little unruly. They would take them to the police station. The police would instill fear into them, but not abuse. But that is my 2 cents. Also, I do believe that more needs to be done with the security in rural schools. Someone told me they just walked into Bookament Bay School sometime last week. No security stopped them, anything. According to the story, he just walked onto the Barley school compound. And we always hear a lot of stories that don't make it to the news of maybe siblings going on to compounds to fight for their siblings, parents going on to compounds to meet other children. And it mostly happens in the rural schools. Because the schools in central Kingston or the schools in the Kingston area, they all have either police security, guardsman security, or some form of security at these schools. So what is being done to prevent these things from happening in the future? Because they have gotten serious. Persons have been fought. Persons have been injured seriously, stabbed, chopped, etc. But this one made it to the news, and I kept saying it could have gone worse. What if he was actually able to stab the principal? But what are your thoughts?
All right, so I am in agreement. Well, first thing, when I read this story, I read the headline, I chuckled, right? And I was still chuckling even when Ari read it. Because I could only imagine how he said that spending 2 nights in prison was the worst experience of his life. And the reason why I chuckled is that I was there saying, well, good for you. Hopefully you have learned your lesson and you would not find yourself on the wrong end of the law again. So I'm hoping that that particular situation, that particular experience would cause him to stop and think of his actions and the possible consequences before engaging in any sort of activity, right? So that's point one. Point two, I sometimes wonder how many instances does this happen in terms of you have I think he may be 17. I don't think he's I know he's not 18. But I wonder in how many instances does this happen with young boys who we would say who we can term as acting up within society. Is this and even let's say with the parents' consent, the mother, father's consent, if they find that the child is acting up, they have done something that's wrong. Of course, I wouldn't necessarily think of putting them when they're too young, but have them placed in a particular setting so that they'd feel and experience what potential prison life could be like. Now, I'm not saying to put them with the general population, but put them in a particular room or something where they're not able to have, let's say, the devices, because you know how attached many persons are to the devices. Let's say they're placed in a room where they don't have a comfortable bed, where they just given basic meals, where they have limited physical interaction with other persons, in a sort of a sense to sort of get them into shape and to let them know that if you continue along a particular line, this is what you're going to have to experience for months or even years, depending on the crime that you could potentially commit, right? So I wonder if this is in place where persons or young people who are acting up, boys and girls, because we have to look at it across the board. If something similar could be done just so that they would know what that experience can feel like. Anything to that? No?
The number to call is 457-9997. Also, the number to WhatsApp 457-9997. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. But I really do believe that close attention needs to be paid to the security of these schools.
I was going to get on to that. I thought you were going to comment on what I just said. I was leaving it open for you to do that. All right. So within the rural communities or even schools in general, I've always found it strange that with some institutions, some schools, nobody seems to stop and ask. I don't know if it's the case because I'm female where they are. I don't look threatening, but threats can come in different packages. That's not often or not always are you stopped and asked, okay, so what's your purpose here? Who are you going to, etc. I remember going to a school recently and a name wasn't taken or anything. I was just able to walk onto the compound and to proceed to where it was I was going. And we do have to ask the question. And I think what it is I'm curious with this particular story, though, is why would he think that the school had road relay? Was it a case where the school seemed empty?
I think it was just a dumb excuse to go onto the compound.
Yeah. I found it was a strange reason because, and as Ari indicated, how was he able to get so far, particularly seeing the way in which he was dressed? Clearly, he was obviously not a student. So we have to, when parents send their children to school, the schools are these children's places of safety, right? Because we're thinking as parents and guardians that this school is going to protect this child or our children for whatever period of time they're going to be, whether it's 8 hours, etc. Right? I know that even on one school, I couldn't even go to see my niece, even though the teachers were aware that she was my niece. I couldn't even set foot onto the compound. I had to get the permission from the principal, which was a little bit interesting at that time when that happened, But when I thought back on it and I said, you know what, I am glad that they had this particular practice in place where absolutely nobody could have gone onto the compound, because it has to be a place of safety. The school is the children's sanctuary, and we have to be cautious in terms of who it is we allow there. Even in many cases, there are disputes between parents, and the children get caught in the middle of it. And even, you have to know in advance who it is coming to your child, so that these children can be safe and secure.
And the funny thing is, well, funny, not so funny. When I was in grammar school, there was a police officer stationed to grammar school, and we used to call him PC, which doesn't seem like much of a nickname right now, but yeah.
As in for police constable?
Yeah. So
Okay.
during my tenure at the grammar school, PC used to be getting in a lot of fights with persons. And, as a child, you're watching it and you're like, well, that's cool. Yeah, they're fighting.
With persons or mean persons?
Persons trying to get onto the compound.
Oh, okay.
But then with age, you realize, listen, this police officer was really going out of his way to protect the guys at the grammar school. I remember one time, a Bethel student left Bethel and came up into the grammar school tuck shop. And I don't know if it was to start a fight or to make peace with one of the students, but it did not end that way, and he ended up being chased off of the compound by a group of grammar school students. But if it is, right, because I don't think PC was there at the time, because I do think he was eventually punished for the amount of fights that he got into and moved from the grammar school. But I don't think he was there at that moment. But imagine if the guy really came with ill intent, came with the intention to stab or to chop or to just cause physical harm that could have gone all the way south, and there wasn't a security guard present. That could have gone all the way bad. And that's the reality for a lot of the schools in the rural areas that might not have a strong alumni, that might not have a strong athletic team, so they're overlooked, that might not have the resources necessary to get the protection for the students. And then persons would then say, oh, these students are bad students, pay them no mind. That's what they do out there. Oh, that's the school where people get pregnant. That's the school these children are in gangs. That's the schools that need the most attention.
I agree.
And we really need to look out for them. So I really applaud what the senior magistrate did in this case. And I hope he continues to do good work.
Yeah. Well, it's left to be seen, but as I said, and it even extends, even when we have this conversation in relation to police, we are, as a society, have to make the effort to ensure that our society is safe, which includes our schools as well. All right. So let's look out for all of our students, all of our children. And as I said initially, in the very beginning of my commentary, I would like to see more of this done with other students who might be acting up, all right, just to give them that little bit of a learning lesson. All right, so the time here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it's now 8, and today's time check came to you with the compliments of New Haven Funeral Home. But stay with us, as we will be back with more commentary in a bit.